iChess.org. I'm going to play a little Fischer random chess against Crafty level 3. So far, Crafty has proved to be quite weak at level 1 and 2, so I'm going to keep playing it at increasing levels of difficulty until I find it's a good match that I can make some decent videos, because right now it's not playing too well. Alright, let's look at the objectives here. The objective is to get the pieces developed. With all the bishops in the corners, they can come into play later. That's not a major concern. They're not in the way. What I need to do is get castled and get my pieces to squares where they can get developed. So what I'm looking at is trying to play e4 followed by knight f3 and then either knight g3 or knight e3. Depends on how much pressure he puts on e4. And then from there I can castle kingside. Then the queen can come into play, and then much later the rooks and the bishops. Okay, so I'm going to open with e4 here and see what the computer does. Alright. So now, where can that knight go to cause me headaches? If it goes to f4, then it's not threatening anything. And if it goes to d4, it's not threatening anything. So I'm going to play knight to f3 here and worry about where to put my other knight next move. Now I can't put the knight on e3 because I'll hang the pawn on e4. So I'm going to play knight to g3 here. Now I'm ready to castle. So is he. Okay, now he's attacking the pawn on f2. So what I'll do here is I'll simply castle. Put the king on g1 and I've castled. Okay, now one drawback with the knight on g3 is that I hem in my bishop, but I'm not worried about that bishop right now. It's going to come into play later. The next step is to continue the development and try to conduct some kind of operation. Now one thing I can play here is c3 with the idea of d4, getting a nice pawn center. By doing that, he might play c5, but I can live with that. I can play my rook to d1 and get d4 in. So I'm going to go ahead and try c3 here. I just have to watch out for any kind of trick that he can do in advance, like knight f4, with the idea of getting it to e2 after he's displaced this knight on g3. So I'm not too worried about that. And I'm not too worried about my bishops just yet. Okay, he's not attacking e4 with his bishop. My knight on g3 covers it, so I can now expand my center. And now he has played d4 or d5. Now, how do I want to play this? If I take the pawn, his bishop comes into play and he's threatening to double my pawns. Or what I can do is plan on getting my development a little better off here. How can I do that? Well, let's see. If I play queen c2, I'm supporting the pawn on e4, and I can take back with the knight if he exchanges and e4 is covered. He might play c5, but I'm not too worried about that. He would be pressuring d4 a little bit. He'd have pawn and bishop on it. My c3 pawn is pinned, but I'm not too worried about that. If anything, I can play rook c1 and let him have at it. Although, let's see. He's on it with his knight, he's on it with his bishop, and he'd be on it with his pawn. So, queen c2, let's analyze this out. Queen c2, c5, rook c1, or rook bc1. C takes d5. No, c takes d4. Now if I play c takes d4, he takes on c2 with his queen. I take back, and now he's crawling all over e5. Okay, so we're crawling all over d4. So I've given up the pawn. So on queen c2, c5, I have to come up with a new plan of action. So he would have some pressure. So I don't necessarily want to push and give him a thematic c5 push. I don't want to lock up the game too early here. Of course, that does take his bishop out of action, and if he takes on d4, I can take back on d4, and I've got both of his bishops locked in, and if he exchanges queens, I'm the one on the open file. So I need some open lines since I have a lead in development, but not by much. I'm going to go ahead and play e5 and see how the computer handles this. Again, we're testing the computer's strength. We're trying to find when this computer will be a match for me. Okay, so now he's shoved his pawn on h5. The worst he can do, he can't really play h4 here because I'll just play knight takes. So again, what I need to do is complete my development, but it looks like maybe he has accidentally hung that knight on g4. What if I play h3 here? Where does his knight go? Maybe I could have done that last move, I don't know, but I didn't. No, I couldn't. His knight had f6. But it looks like if I play h3, he's going to drop his knight. Where does it go? Everything is covered. Okay. So level 3 is not very good either. Okay, now he's attacking my knight, but did he make a flight square for his knight? No, he didn't. I can just take the pawn, and knight takes h4. What does he do? I don't know what he does. Let's find out. Or it does. I keep calling it a it, or he when it's an it. Okay, now he has to give up the piece for 2 pawns. So I have a winning game. Now the trick is to go win it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do to achieve this aim is try to redeploy my pieces. Now, do I fear a double pawn if he takes on g3? Gives him a nice center pawn mass, but he's still down a piece for a pawn, and I'd be attacking a pawn on f2. So maybe I don't want my pawns doubled. I'm not quite ready to play knight e2 to d4. I still need to complete my development. What if I play queen e3? That has a tempo on his bishop, develops my queen, will recapture on g3 with my queen. Let's go for that, queen e3. And then I'm looking okay here. He's got to deal with his bishop, and he plays there. Okay, I don't mind that so much. Now I'll go to, if I go to f3, he has d4. If I go to d3, he has knight c5. In which case he may get to double my pawns anyway, but I shouldn't fear that. I'll go to d3. I shouldn't fear getting my pawns doubled. Okay. Now he plays his rook on my knight, so guess if he wants to double my pawns, he may. We'll let him. He doesn't want to double my pawns, so I'll just blockade his pawn and offer a knight trade, and if he goes knight to c5, he's blocking his pawn from going to c5. And I'll be attacking something here soon. His king is caught in the center. Let's see, let's think about this. There's no rush. My bishop on a1 is kind of hurting, and my bishop on h1 is kind of hurting, but as I was saying earlier, they'll come into play later. Let's just eliminate the idea of him doubling those pawns, and I'll play knight e2 and prepare to get my light squared bishop into play. Okay, good. Now, if I play knight d4, he can trade knights, and I can take back with the pawn rather than the knight, and that stops him from playing c5 without opening up lines in my favor. Of course, now as so the right knight, I'll put the knight on f3 there, simply because it keeps him out of knight f4. And anyway, I'll be getting some stuff developed. Okay, knight c5, that's fine. So now my queen's loose. Is he threatening e5? Yeah, I guess he is, but I can deal with that. I'll put my queen where it can check his king, and then I can play moves like knight b3. So let's put the queen on e3. That looks okay. Yeah, queen e3. Now it plays the peculiar move queen a6. Okay, he's threatening a pawn. Do I need to worry about that pawn? Well, not really. If I just move it, it's safe. His only real attacking move is E5. What if I just play A3 and sit? Well, the problem with A3 is eventually it becomes weak when I try to move the other pawn, but I can do that with gain of tempo and then play bishop B2 and just play A3. Just play slow here. He should play E5. He's not playing it. Okay, so since he should play E5 and he's not, maybe it's time for me to restrain E5 with F4. Now that does open up a diagonal towards my king, but it's not one he's easily going to exploit. Knight E6. I take his knight, and then I can play B4 if need be. And if I have to give up a pawn down there, I can give it up. I'm covering the key squares here. I'll just play. Of course, wait. He's not threatening E5 so much now because I have Queen G5 check, Bishop E7, and Queen takes E5. So what I need is to get more pieces into the game, and he can't really play E5. So let's think this out and come up with a good move. If I play B4 here, it attacks his knight. Where's his knight going to go? B7, I can live with that. D7, I can live with that. And then I follow up with Bishop B2, and my bishop is developed, and his C5 move is restrained. Knight E4, where's it threatened to go? Nowhere. Okay, I'm going to play B4, Knight E4, then Bishop B2, then he plays E5, and I can put my knight on B3, and I need to get C5 under my control, so there it is. Okay, now he's on A3, so I stop and I play Bishop B2, and he can't even play Bishop F4 with eyeballing Knight D2. Okay, alright. So the computer moves fast, which is good. Now I have time to work things out. Now the next step is to get something done with my rooks or my bishops. Now one bishop for now is sitting on B2. He's fine for now. He's not going to be in the game for a little bit, but he will be eventually. The other bishop, I could play G4, and it's threatening to take a knight, but I'm not threatening to win a pawn or anything. Queen D3 threatens a pawn, which you can guard with C6. That shuts his bishop in. I can play F3 here and chase his knight out. Where does it go? If it goes to G3, I can exchange it, and the E file is opened up, but I'm not ready to attack on it yet. Hello, decisions. Let's see. I'm up a piece for a pawn, so white is winning. It's just a matter of opening up the board at the right time. And the way black is playing it, he's going to make another mistake, or it's going to make another mistake, which will help me. The only trick is to do this efficiently and carefully. I can't really allow him to play Bishop F4 at some point, so I've got to keep control of F4. What if I switch my knights around a little bit? Knight F3 attacks his rook and drives it away. Then I can put the other knight on D4 for what it's worth. But I'm still not really threatening anything. I can play... I guess one question is he threatening E4? Now, I don't think he is. Go back to my F4 idea. F4 restrains E4 or E5, and then I can play Knight F3, driving his rook back, and then G4, activating my bishop a little bit. I don't know. I think the computer is going to just be positionally crushed if it if I just start taking over squares. So F4 just seems logical. F4, now he goes back. Okay, now I'm going to chase his rook out with knight F3. But I don't necessarily need to do that. The rook's not going anywhere. One thing I could do is play King H2 and G3. Could try that, and that activates my bishop, but his knight's firmly entrenched on E4. Suppose I play knight G3 instead. I've got my knight anchored in on D4. That's a beautiful knight that I own. It's just doing a lot of things here, and I need to at some point make some exchanges. Okay, I could play F5. That seems to weaken a few things up and open up a line. If he takes, I can take back with a knight, and I've got a great knight attacking a rook, attacking a bishop, and then mask threats, discover threats on F7. So, and if he pushes by with G5, I can just play G4 if I want, and work on that knight on E4. Oh, it's not clear unless I give up my bishop for it. I don't know. I don't really want to play G4. F5 he plays G5. Now what's my follow-up? How about knight F3 on his rook and on G5? That might force rook H5 to guard it. And then, okay, F5, G5, knight F3, rook H5. And I can play knight F4. No, I can't play knight F4. G5 takes F4. Oh, he's playing knight E5 too. Or plunk the other knight in on D4 first and then do that. Okay, I'm going to try F5. I've got to open up some lines, and the way the computer's playing, it'll probably open them up for me. Okay, played C5, and that's not a move I'm too worried about because I've restrained him from driving away the piece on D4, and that's a solid point I want to have under my control. I don't mind that my pawns are getting split up here on the queen side. I don't mind that at all. I'm opening up lines, so B takes C5. Now he takes with the bishop. Now I've got to be careful a little bit. If I play G take or F takes G6, he might get E5 in. Of course, then I take on F7, and I'm threatening to make a queen. And he takes my piece, and I make the queen, and he cries. So I have time to do that, even though he may be getting E5 in shortly. I can live with that because I'm opening up lines. Ooh, he took with queen. Okay, that's all right. Okay, now his threat is E5, so I've got to deal with that. I can't play knight F3 here because my queen would be loose. What's he threatening I should worry about? G2 is well covered. He's not threatening to take on H3. I have to cover knight D2. So E5 is a threat that I do have to deal with. So, ooh, yeah, there's some problems here. I've kind of made a mistake because I'm lined up on the diagonal. Just completely overlooked queen taking. I was thinking the pawn had to take, but that's okay. it's time to start finding some good moves here. So let's see. I mean, after all, I'm a piece ahead, and even if he wins it back, he's kind of got a crummy position here. So suppose I just start, well, queen f3, knight d2, queen takes f7, he plays queen takes f7, I take with the rook, he takes my rook on b1. I guess I don't mind giving back the piece so much. I'm just going to centralize my rook. Rook b. Well, wait a minute. No, I'm just going to play rook to b1, rook from b to e1, and live with the fact I'm losing a piece back. Okay, fine. I get a pawn for it, so I'm not too worried about dropping it. Now I can't play queen f3 because he still gets knight d2 in. Now, when he takes, how do I want to take back? With the knight or the pawn? Okay, I have to watch out for a few tricks, so it might be better to take back with the knight. Let's see. So it plays a little better at this level, but just the fact that it dropped a piece so easily, I have to doubt that this is any good for it. Suppose I play queen d3. Now I'm on his b5 pawn, and I'm pinning his knight, offering a queen exchange. And if this thing plays that poorly, it's going to play an ending weakly. So let's just start getting the guys out of the line of fire on that diagonal. Make him. He doesn't have to take this move; it's still pinned. But let's get the stuff out of the line of fire, and that'll be done with. Okay, queen d3 keeps some latent threats on his position. Okay, now he guarded it. Now if I move the king, he's forced to take back, and I should take back. I could take back with the knight, and I'd be on his bishop again. And my knight on e2 is holding together the g3 square. And the king on h2, if he takes, like if I take with the pawn, he gets bishop d6 check. So I want to take with the knight, but he still gets bishop d6 check. I should be able to live with that. Let's just play king h2 and make him take it. Get out of the line of fire here. Like I say, I still have a pin on his knight. If his knight moves, I'm going to trade queens and go into an ending that I should win. And like I say, this puts a little pressure on his bishop, and my bishop on h1 will come in much later. I don't mind he's sitting there not doing anything. Okay, king h2. Okay, now the big question, how do I want to retake? If I take with the knight, my queen is tied down to guarding g3. That I can live with. Okay, so I'll take with the knight, and my bishop will just get into play soon enough. Okay, now he took it off, and that I like, because that bishop was a little bit of a thorn in my side. So now next step now will be to activate my dark squared bishop so that it comes into play. Okay, now I've got to watch out he doesn't crawl all over h3 and get somewhere with it. So the next step in the evolution of this game is to activate all my pieces. Now, the one piece that needs to get activated now is my bishop. How about if I get it to c1 where it tries to plant itself on f4, which seems like a nice diagonal. It's not doing much here. Let's put it on c1, and we'll re-coordinate things as we go. I believe black can still castle. I don't know why he hasn't, but I'm not too worried if he does. I can cover h3 if he piles up on it. My rook can go to f3. So let's just see what it does. Now I play King E1. That's just no good. Okay. So the computer's good enough to see some tactics and find some good moves, but it's also kind of bad because it was dropping a piece. Did that out of the opening. It got a piece trap. So, like I say, the next step is to improve the position of my bishop. Let's get it on a better diagonal. Here it covers G3, which frees my queen somewhat. Okay, so there we go. Now he played A5. And worst he can do is make a pass pawn. So it's interesting playing computers. They play so unorthodox, and it seems to be playing some reasonable moves ever since it dropped that piece. So it is level 3. It's going to get better. Probably it makes several good moves, then it'll throw the random blunder that you need to exploit. Maybe it's made a blunder here that I've missed. I don't know. Okay, so got to stop and think about it. I have 4 pawns. It has 4 pawns. I have a bishop that cannot move still that I need to get in play. I'm not poised to push the g-pawn to either square. It gets, if I play g3, he has rook takes h3, or even bishop takes h3. And if I play g4, he takes it. It's pinned. So the objective here has been to get my bishop better posted. His knight is pinned for what it's worth, so I could play bishop g3 here and drive his rook out. If I do that, he retreats the rook. Now, where do I go? I have the open F file that I can't really do much with yet. And I'm blocking my g-pawn from advancing, which I want to do, so I get my last piece out. So if I play bishop e5, that's a good square for the bishop, but he may kick it out with f6. But then that pawn is a target. I can play bishop g3 on his rook, and the rook retreats. And he's not threatening knight takes g3, although I don't mind so much if he takes it. I've got some pressure on f6, although my queen is tied down to guarding the bishop on g3 because the king is not defending, so the sole defender, even though the knight's pinned. The queen has to stay and guard the bishop. Just a rule of chess, you can't put your own king in check. Did you follow that? Okay, so let's see. What I really need to do is activate my bishop on h1. That's what's missing. So in order to do that, I have to chase him out of the pressure he's got. So I can do that maybe by rook f3 and rook g3, because there's a pin on the knight. Then the rook can go to a better square, maybe even g8 if I'm lucky, winning a rook. And if I can't go that far, I can at least put it on g5 as long as there's a pin in action. And one advantage of rook f3 is that I can maybe even activate it on the e-file, double the rooks on the e-file, give up an exchange and have an attack and use my bishops against him. I'm going to try rook f3. I just need the active pieces, and I don't see a direct way yet to get the bishop on h1 into play, but it will be there. Okay, let's play rook f3 and see what it does. He could play bishop g4, but I just go and pin it with rook g3. Okay, so let's try bishop f3 and see what it does. King f8. Okay, now the knight is no longer pinned. So my plan of rook g3 no longer works. Okay, but there are some new things in this position that weren't there before. I still can't play g3 because of rook takes. I still can't play g4 because of queen or bishop takes. If I play rook g1, I'm not threatening g4 because there's a pin. So what I need to do, where's this knight threatening to go to f2? Now I've got that covered. I could play bishop g3 here and chase his rook. We talked about that earlier. Bishop g3. If knight takes g3, I have queen takes queen. And wait, what did I say? Rook g3? No, I can't play rook. Oh, bishop g3. If he plays knight takes knight, I play queen takes. And his queen is lost because there's a pin. So bishop g3, he can't take my bishop. He has to move his rook. Right? And it further entombs my bishop on h1, but it gives me some new activity. Bishop g3 puts his rook where? On h7 is logical, but the computer isn't logical. So I can put the bishop on e5, and don't have to worry about f6 because it's not that pawn is pinned and can't do anything. And bishop g3 does a few things, and he doesn't have a sack on h3, so voila, I'm going to try it. Bishop g3. Now retreated the rook there. Now my plan is, or was, he is threatening knight takes g3 now, and so if I play rook f1, knight takes g3, and I don't have time for the queen takes queen because he has knight takes f1 check, little Zwischenzug. So here I'm willing to give up the bishop advantage that I have, but maybe I don't have to. Maybe I can just park that bishop on e5 and go from there, because I say if he plays f6, it's a pin piece, and I can always deal with the bishop later, find a new square for it. I'm going to try bishop e5 because it's a nice active square for it, and see what it does. Okay, bishop e5. Now, as I said, it played f6, but that's not a worry because he's not threatening it. His pawn is pinned. So what if I double my rooks on the f-file? Now the threat is bishop takes, knight takes, rook takes, queen takes, rook takes, rook takes. Now I've given up my two rooks for his queen. And then he has two rooks for the queen, and I have two connected pass pawns, a queen and a bishop against a rook, and two rooks and a bishop. And now my bishop gets developed, and I have a couple pass pawns. Well, this might be an instructive ending to try to win. So let's go ahead and try that. And I don't have to do what I said, but I could. So rook fe1 or ef1, and let's see what the computer does. Again, now he's not taking on f3 or g3, or he's not taking a piece on g3, so he can't drop his knight into g3. I just take it. So let's double the rooks and see what the computer does. King e7. Okay, now I can take on f6 with check. Knight takes, rook takes, f6. Queen takes, rook takes, knight takes back with the queen or the rook. Wait a minute, or the rook or the king. Then I can play g5. Now I'm threatening d5. If he takes with the king, and I don't think he can get away with bishop takes g4. His king is exposed. I just have to find a plan here. Okay, let's review this. Bishop takes f6. He takes with the knight. Oh, there's a problem here. Bishop takes f6 doesn't work. When he takes with the knight, I'm not threatening rook takes because my queen is loose on d3. And if I stop and take his queen off first, he takes with the rook and f6 is guarded. So my bishop is now a loose piece. Okay, so I got to find a new square for the bishop. Let's just let's attack his rook and drive it out of there. Okay, bishop f4. And he backed his rook up. Okay, I'm still not threatening to play g4. He takes it. But I can do other things here. I can go over and seize the open C file, the half-open C file. Doesn't look like a bad idea. He doesn't really have a threat here. I've got h3 covered. I've got g3 covered. I'm going to play rook c1 and see what I can muster up over on that side of the board, since his king is exposed. Okay, rook fc1. Okay, there, boom. Now, is he threatening h3? No, he's not. Bishop takes h3. I take with my rook. He has knight f2 and he drops his queen, and he doesn't have a tricky mate. c7 is mine. I can put a rook there and pin his bishop. Then I'm threatening to play queen takes b5. And if he breaks the pin by moving his king, I'd be able to sack the exchange and play rook takes d7, king takes. If I can line up where his king takes, I can be taking on b5 with check, and then very likely gobbling either a5 or d5. So I'm just gonna, it's aggressive. Let's see what the computer does. Okay, rook c7. Do I see any tricks for it? No, I don't. Okay, rook c7. Okay, he broke the pin, and that's fine. Now if I take on d7, like I say, he could take back with the rook. Can I live with that? I do get the pawn on b5, but I'm only attacking the pawn on a5. Threatening queen b8 check by rook d8. So, of course, then I can get my g4 move in, but I'm not really attacking the knight on b5 yet, e4 yet. My rook's in the way. Of course, I can. But then again, I can play rook g3 here, because now his knight is pinned. So rook g3, oh, there's some tricks here. Rook g3, suppose he just plays knight takes rook and offers me a queen. Okay? Then I play queen takes g6, and then he has knight f1 check. And my king goes to g1, and he cries. He doesn't have any more tricks. So rook g3... what's the idea behind rook g3? There's no real idea behind it except to drive his queen off that open file, and I'm not any closer to getting g4 in. Decisions. Okay, so the computer's a little better here, and I'm glad I'm slowing down a little bit once I drop the piece back. Material is quite even. He's done all he can to assault my king. He can't really do a lot more. He's not threatening anything that I should really worry about. Of course, one thing I can do now is find a new diagonal for my bishop. Since his knight is pinned, I can go attack his pawn on a5 with my bishop. This does a few things. If he pushes a4, I can play bishop b4. Now my bishop's got a great diagonal. And yeah, that makes sense. He's still not threatening anything I should worry about. So, lodging it out, let's try bishop d2 and see what the computer does. Okay, good. It played what I wanted. Now my bishop has a much better diagonal. And I have a little added bonus here. His knight is pinned. So my bishop on b4 does a number of things for me. And I'll just let it go there. Okay, bishop b4. Now I've got a much better bishop than I had before. I still have to solve the problem of my bishop on h1, but I'm working on it. Okay, so now he comes back to h4. Not that I mind. Now this is he's given up the protection of his bishop, so I can play rook takes d7 and then take on b5 with check. How does that work? Rook takes, king takes, queen takes, b5 check. His king has to get out of check. Where's it going to go? If it goes to e6, I have queen c6 check, followed by queen takes d5, and suddenly I've got a whole lot of activity. Nothing. There's maybe a win in there I haven't seen yet. But the thing I like about playing that move is that my queen and bishop can just frustrate him, and then all I have to do is get the other bishop into the game, and I'll probably be able to do it soon. And it's curtains. I just want to do it for the sake of doing it. Let's see. Rook takes, king takes, queen takes, check. Where is he going to go? He's got to go where I can't check him the next move. So he may go king c8 or c7. But then I just pick up the pawn on d5, even though it's not with check. I'm getting ready to check him again here pretty quick, and maybe even checkmate him. I don't see the clear forced win yet, but he's not threatening anything I need to worry about. He doesn't have enough pressure on g2 or h3. So let's just do it and see what we can come up with, because if anything, I get material equality. I get rid of two of his pawns, and I've undermined that powerful knight on e4 a little bit. So let's do it. Rook takes d7, and okay, now on check. Okay, now he's got to get out of check. So he went to c7. That's fine. Now I could check with the bishop on a5, but that gives him d6. So I'm just going to take the pawn on d5 and see what the computer comes up with, because suddenly his king is very, very exposed. Okay, so queen takes d5, and he doesn't have any magic move here that suddenly, well, maybe he does. Rook takes h3. I can take with the pawn. Yeah, he doesn't have enough here. Okay, queen takes d5. He backed up the queen, or he backed up the rook. Okay, so now, how do I want to check him next? I have queen c4 check, and I have bishop h5 check. I do not have rook c3 check, because his knight takes it, and unless I want to sacrifice another exchange, because I will get the piece back, queen c4 check, and then take it. But then my bishop gets into play finally. Maybe. He's all over h3 still, though, darn it. Okay, so bishop a5 check does limit his responses, and he can't go to the d file. He can't. He has b7 and b7, b8, and c8, and on each square there is some potential danger. I have to get my queen out of trouble, but that's easy enough. It can check on a number of squares next. Okay, so let's see. Queen. Gotta think about this for a second. Like I say, I've got material equality, but his king is quite frisky here, and there's a good chance there's a decisive attack in here. I just need to get my rook into play, or my other bishop, and I've got him. But the rook's going to have a little trouble getting into play. He's holding g3, and he can't get to c3 or b3, so my rook isn't really helping yet. It's kind of a two-piece attack. Let's see. So how do we want to do this guy in? This thing, this silicone beast that has no right to threaten humanity with its extreme calculation skills. Okay, fortunately it's on level 3, so it's going to get tougher as I play other levels. I'm glad it's playing a better game than it was. You know, it started out very weak, but it found some ways to do better. Queen c4 check lets him go back to d7 or d8. Then I don't really have a good follow-up check. So since the bishop is on Oh wait, if I put the bishop on a5 with check, I've got to deal with it later because when my queen moves, it's still under attack. So it's such a good bishop, I just can leave it there. Of course, I have an interesting move, bishop d6 check. If he plays knight takes d6, I get rook c3 check in a move which I didn't have. Does that lead to anything? Not necessarily. You can play rook king d7, and I don't really have a follow-up. So I need to get the queen out of there. And if I play queen c4 check, he can play king d7, but then I can actually get away with g4 here, because if queen takes g4, I have queen f7 check. Of course, my king's a little shaky. So there's plenty of possibilities. Before I reject bishop a5 altogether, let's just check. Okay, as I said, he has 3 squares to go to. King to c8. That allows queen c6 check, and I think he's in deep trouble. So he can't go to b7. My queen's on it. Bishop a5 check. He has to go to c8 or b8. If he goes to c8, queen c6 check almost assuredly does him in, I think. Okay, bishop a5 check, king c6, queen c8, c6 check, king b8 forced, bishop b6 check, and he's bought the farm, so he has to go king b8, and then from king b8, what's my next check? And I don't think I have one from that point. My queen can't go to d6, my queen can't go to b3, my queen can't go to b5, my rook can't go to b3, and he's wiggled out. Amazing. So bishop a5 check is an impulsive move that just runs out of checks after king b8. Unless I'm missing something blatantly obvious. My queen has to move, and it has to cover the bishop and a5, and there's no place it can do it. I can't see a way to do it. Bishop a5, king b8, what's my follow-up? There is no follow-up. Queen f7, queen c6, queen... No. Okay, I have to check on c4. Unless I can find a non-checking move that's powerful. Sometimes you don't check, you go create something else, but I don't see it. So queen c4 check, and we'll live with the results. Okay, king b7. Now I have some potential to do some new things here. Since he's covering his 4th rank, my 5th rank, I could play bishop c5 here. And the point of bishop c5 is that it threatens the pawn on a4, and he may stop and guard it with rook a8, or he may stop and take the piece first. But these computers tend to be materialistic at these levels and don't like to hang material, so you can take advantage of a computer's weakness by letting it play conservative and then go in and maneuver around it. That's perfectly legitimate strategy. It won't play its best move because of its heuristics. It's set up to not pitch material. So bishop c5 has some merit. I can't take my rook off the 3rd rank so easily, and it's not clear how I get it into action just yet. And it allows a potentially potent queen g3 check followed by rook takes h3 check, and I'm quite embarrassed. So is he threatening rook takes h3 check here? No, he's not, because I take with my rook, and he takes with a rook check, and I take with the pawn. Ooh, and then he has queen g3. So rook takes... I can't take with a rook. I have to take with the pawn. And he doesn't have queen g3. He doesn't have queen g1. Okay, so I got to make sure I don't get accidentally checkmated over here. Okay, so let's see. What I need now again is to get the bishop on a better diagonal, and I got him there. What other better diagonal is there? If I go to e7, I'm not really threatening f6, but I'm threatening a5. If I go to e1, I cover g3, and that's a reasonable defensive move. I've got his king shut off a little bit, so if I play bishop e1, I'm securing myself a little bit on the king side, not that I need to worry. And then I get ready for d5, which threatens queen c6. Of course, I could play d5 in this position, just leave the queen there. If I play d5, I'm threatening queen c6 check, and then he has to go to b8 or a7, and I'm close to checkmating him there, close, because I've cut his rook off and I've got some new checking possibilities. So I see pawn d5 might be good. Let's see, got to make sure rook, if he plays rook takes h3, I take with the pawn. I have to take with the pawn. If I take with the rook, I can be in trouble here. Rook takes again, I have to take with the king, and queen g3 is mate. Out. And if I take with the pawn, queen g3 is mate. So let's try d5 here. What he had? Knight d2 doesn't really do him any good because he's not going to fork me. I have checks to get out of it. And yeah, let's try it. d5. Okay, let's see what it does. Okay, queen there. Okay, well now I get checks. Okay, and having checks is good, and they may lead to mate. Now he's not yet threatening things I should worry about. So queen c6, well, he's close to. I'll double check it. So I have some choices here. Queen c6 check forces him to play his king to one or two squares, and I don't quite have a follow-up, but I'm close. So let's see. Queen c6 check. Let's consider king b8. Now, what is he threatening? Is he threatening queen takes rook, for example? Queen takes rook, pawn takes queen, rook takes h3 check. My king goes to g2, and he checks on h2, and my king has to go to the back rank, and he takes the bishop on h1 check, and my king comes up, and he checks on with the other rook on the back rank, or on the 7th rank, and my king goes up to, say, d3, and his rook d2 check. Oh wow, my king's going for a walk. Oh, there's a lot to this. See how interesting chess is? I do have his knight pinned for what it's worth. Of course, on queen c6 check, if he plays to a7, I take his a-pawn with check. I get that out of the way. And then I can return to the scene of the crime, get more checks in. So that kind of forces him to go to a7. Then I can play the shocking move rook takes f6, but then he has rook takes h3. Check, and I have to get out of check. I'm threatening my own mates. Oh, it's interesting here. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Got to think about this one, huh? Very complicated position, and I'm not exactly sure what to do just yet. But we're not in any hurry here. I'm not going anywhere, and I've committed to this game. So sometimes you just have to plan things out. I've been playing off the diagram only because the computer is weak, and I expected it to be weak for a while. So what I'm going to do is set this up on a 3D board. Maybe I'll get a better insight into this if I set it up on a full chess set. because I think it's important now to take my time and actually find the decisive win, because it has to be there. He's got some counterplay on my king that I have to watch out, and I see some potential danger there. And as long as I cover that, the computer really has no chance. The computer wins games against humans when they play impulsively and rush. And I don't have to rush here. This game, there's no clock, and the objective is to find the best move. Now, if you're playing a correspondence chess game, theoretically you have days and hours, depending on your time limit, you can spend on a move. So this is a position where I need to just hunker down and find the right continuation. And it has to exist, but I have to be careful about the latent threats that he has against my king. And they do exist. And if I blitz this out, the computer will take advantage. If I make one little simple mistake in my analysis, the computer will show me what was wrong with it. So you can't play fast against a computer. You really have to slow down. And I do believe it's very weak at this level, but it's still good enough to not to make too many mistakes. Okay, so let's look at it. If Queen C6 check, he has two legal moves. He has King A7 and he has King B8. Okay, so on King B8, what's my follow-up? Well, let's look at A7 first. I was explaining that. I get the pawn with check. Now we can go to B8, B6, or B7. So it's hard to say where he's going to go. Let's go to B8 for the sake of argument. I now have, by taking that pawn on A4, I've now cleared the B3 square for my rook. It can now get over there. So maybe I can throw a move like bishop D6 check in, sacrificing the bishop, so that the rook can now check, and the rook comes into play on B3, and his king may be in a lot of danger. That knight on D6 kind of gets in its way. So King C7, Queen A7 check, King D8. Of course, I've given up a lot for this. His knight can interpose. Queen, Rook B8 check, Knight C8. And I need that bishop. I don't have it. I've sacrificed it. He might be wiggling out of this. Queen B6 check, King E7, running for the hills. Rook B7 check, King F8. Then I have Queen C4. Oh, then I have Queen C5 check. And I'm going to get the knight and get him. So I think there's some merit to that. I think the first move is Queen C6. I think that's a give me. But I have to, before I play it, I want to make sure that he is not threatening something on me that I have to make sure I don't forget about. And I've already covered it, but I want to check it one more time. And by checking it one more time, I make sure that I don't get this little surprise checkmate against me. Okay, so let's think about this for a moment. The way we look at this is, suppose it was black's move. Well, it isn't black's move, so I do this sometimes. I just say, let's throw a move away, and so we can actually play it on the demo board. But here I can just say, from this position, suppose it's black's move. Okay, if rook takes h3, it's a mistake for me to play rook takes h3, because now he gets rook takes h3 check, and if I take with the pawn, he has Queen G3 mate. Okay, that's definitely a threat. I wonder if he even had it last move and didn't do it. Did I miss it last move? Maybe I did. But anyway, but I have some defenses. On rook takes G3, what I do is I take with the pawn. Now I have G3 covered with my rook. So if he plays rook takes H3, check, now I'm taking back with my rook, and he's out of rooks, and he can't go to G3. And he does have a check with Queen F4, but I should be able to, well, maybe not. Maybe I don't wiggle out of this. Ooh, this is dangerous. Rook, Queen F4 check, and then if my king goes to G2, there's an epaulet mate. Okay, so black has a serious threat here. So I have to keep that in mind and make sure that all roads lead to mate on my part, that I don't give up checks, because he has some legitimate threats here. So he could have maybe done this last move and gotten away with it. Of course, no, he didn't have Queen F4 available. That was a key check. Okay, so Queen C6 check. If he goes to B8, that's the difference though. I'm not taking on A4 with check. I need to take on A4 with check. So what's my follow-up here? I can check on B6 with the queen. And now, well, I'll check on B5 with the queen. That'd be better, because then I'm threatening to take, if he goes to A file, I'm threatening to take on A7 with, or A4 with check. So he can run his king though. King C8. He doesn't want to go to C7 because that lets my bishop check him. So King C8. And I still can't swing my rook over to check. So what's my follow-up? So Queen C6 check, he just plays King B8. And I'm not exactly where I want to be. Of course, I can try D6, but then I have to watch out for his tricks. And his tricks are to play rook takes H3 check, pawn takes H3. Then he sacks the other rook on H3. I play rook takes H3. And now he has Queen F4 check. And it doesn't matter where I put my king. He's mated on F2. And if I put the rook there, it's mate in 1. So I definitely have to step this carefully. If push comes to shove, I can just bring my... well, one thing I can do too in this position is just play King G1. Then I'm threatening his queen. And now he can take on H3 though with his rook. And that might be a problem because I can't take back. It is a tricky position, but I have time and I'm going to find the answer. And this is one way, for those of you that are playing correspondence chess, you can just have fun with this. You just spend hours and hours on this until you solve it. And there's got to be a solution, and I'm going to find it. I believe that my idea of sacrificing the exchange was good because it got me a couple pawns and opened up his king. Now it's just a matter of solving the problem, solving the tactics, and a computer chess engine, of course, will solve the tactics in a matter of microseconds, whereas a human has to stop and work through everything. So there's a big difference. Okay, so if anything, push comes to shove, I can always drop my queen back to D3 and take away all of his threats that he's trying to generate. But at King G1, I was thinking that because it threatens to take his queen. But what if he just plays rook to H3? Okay, now what do? If I play, I can't take his pawn with my, or take his rook with my pawn. I can take his rook with my rook, but now he takes my rook on H3, and he's threatening a mate on, or close to it. He's threatening Queen D1 check, and this kind of antsy, kind of troubling. So what I basically have to do is find out if I can't mate him. I may have to stop and defend this position. So, of course, at some point I can always drop my bishop back to E1. I was considering doing that before. That takes away a lot of the key squares he would like to check on. So if I have to make a defensive move, it's not a bad one. It doesn't help me checkmate him necessarily, but then again it might. And one thing about a queen check is it puts him on a dark square, and then if I play bishop E1, I'm threatening to give a check with the bishop. So yeah, that might be the idea here. I think maybe I've logicked it out. Okay. Here what we do is we play Queen C6 check, and as I said, he has to play King B8 or King A7. And I think B8's the better move because I don't get the pawn with check. And I think if I get the pawn with check, I think I've got him. And I've already worked that out. We'll come back to that. Now I play bishop A1. Now what this does, or bishop E1, what this does is it covers that G3 square and the F2 square that he was getting checkmates on. At the same time, it also, in some variations, threatens to put the bishop on G3, where it'll do me a lot of good. It'll get rid of that knight of his. So let's try that. Now, first let's try rook takes H3 check, see if it works. Now I play rook takes H3. Okay. Now he does have queen F4 check in that position, but does he have anything else to go along with it? Suppose I just move the king. Now he has a check on no, he doesn't have a check on E3, but he can take the rook and then have a check on E3. Rook takes, but now my bishop's getting out. Now he checks on E3. Where do I go? King F1. Now he has a knight check on G3, but I don't think that helps him. I trade it. He has a queen check on D3, and he may get a draw. He has a queen check on H3. Okay, so something's wrong here. I have other ways to play this. He might be getting a draw on that line. Wow. Yeah, you try to out-tactic a computer, good luck, and now the thing is, it's being crafty on me. It lulled me into false insecurity early, and now it's finding all the lines, and you have to assume it's going to find lines. You can't just say this thing is bad. It's going to do some bad moves. So queen C6 check, king B8, bishop E1, and I was having it play rook takes H3 check. So let's, instead of taking with the rook, let's take with the pawn, because what that does is it guards my rook on F3, and he has to sack a rook to do more here. So rook takes H3 check, rook takes H3. Now before he was able to do this because he had a mate, an epaulette mate, and with queen F4 check, right? Queen F4 check in the other position, my bishop wasn't on that diagonal, so my king had to go to either G1 or G2, and queen F2 was mate. So now when he can give a check on E2, and I have bishop G2 now, which I didn't have before, and if he takes my bishop on E1, I suddenly have rook A1 check followed by rook A8 mate. So this seems to be the winning path. So if I take away that rook takes H3 thing, which I determined is a viable option for black, I'm closer to solving this, and I still don't have all the tactics set. Got to watch out. I may miss something here because this is a computer and I'm not. This is how you lose games, when you don't analyze everything and you make one little mistake. And the stronger your opponent, the more likely something like that's going to happen. So queen C6 check, king B8, bishop E1. He no longer has rook takes H3 check, because I can survive that. And now, if it were my move, which it isn't, I might be threatening bishop G3 check. And what bishop G3 check does is it almost checkmates him, and it forces him to get rid of that viable knight. And then I take rook takes G3. Now does he have rook takes H3 in that position? Rook takes H3. I take with the pawn. He gets a check on E2, and I play bishop G2, and he's out of checks. Okay, so I believe I've got it. Queen C6 check. We're going to play it. It's been a long time spent on that move, but it's worth it. Okay, so queen C6 check. Now, as I said, he has to go back to B8. You can't go to A7 and give me that pawn. So now, as I said, I play bishop E1, and we pray a little bit. Okay, and I might even be able to get away with moves like rook G3 and give up another exchange, but still I don't have that bishop on H1 in the game. So now the key here is to play bishop E1. Okay. Okay, well, now we hope we didn't miss anything. We'll find out here in a moment. Okay, he piled up another piece on H3, so he's crawling all over H3. And unfortunately for him, or it, I've got a new check that I didn't have before, and that's bishop G3, because he's taken his knight off the critical square. Okay, so now I think we can safely assume that he has definitely got threats on H3 now, because he's got 4 guys on it, and I only have 3, one of them being my king. If push comes to shove, I can bring my queen back to C3 and help, but I don't think I have to do that. I think I'm close to having a win now. I just have to logic it out. Okay. What are my possible moves here? Okay, well, I have bishop G3 check, and that's the most forcing one. So let's consider that first. Okay, it's check. Okay, if he takes my bishop, I take with the rook, and he doesn't have enough sacks on H3 to make it worth his while, right? So he must get out of check, and his only legal move is King D or King A7. Now I'm close to a mate, but not quite. Now what I can do now is pick up queen. Oh, I can't take the A4 pawn. His queen is covering it. Darn. Oh man. Okay, so I have a check on C7, but I'm not sure if it leads me anywhere. I need to get my rook on him. If I can drive him up to the 3rd rank, rook takes F6 is a check. So queen C7 check. He can't go king A6 because rook takes F6 check, king B5, rook B6 check, king A5, queen A7 is mate. So on queen C7 check, he must go back to A8. Now, how do I continue with this? I do have queen A5 check. Now he has to go to B7. Okay, I don't have rook B3 check. His pawn's covering that. I can go back to C7 again, but that doesn't get me anywhere. I can go to B5 and hope he goes to the C file, but he won't. You go back to A8 most likely. And there's got to be something I'm missing, but I'm not seeing it yet. Queen C6 check. But you know, he may not have a lot on H3. Since my bishop is now over there helping, it takes a lot of the sting out. Okay, so let's see. Let's think about this initial position again. And logically, white's probably got to win. Material is even, but the combination is not clear yet. Suppose we mix things up a little bit. Let's check with the bishop first on G3, forcing him to A7. Now I'll check with the bishop on F2 and force him back to B8. Now there's a difference here. The difference is my bishop's now on a different square. So if I play queen, this may be it, queen B6 check, he can't go to A8 because queen A7 is mate. So he has to go to C8. And now rook C3 check is playable. I get my rook into the game with check. He has to go to D7, and I think this does it. Rook C7 check. He goes, doesn't matter where he goes, E8 or B8, or E8 or D8, and then I get queen B8 check. So I think I have it solved. So bishop G3 check, king A7, bishop F2 check, forces him back to B8, and now I check on B6, and he has to go to C8, and my rook comes into it, and that does it. Okay, so what does he do? Nothing. He's lost. Bishop G3 check does it. Okay, he moved to A7, now bishop F2 check, and he went to B8. Now queen b6 check, and he can't go to a8, it's mate. Now I get rook c3 check in, and he gives up the queen because it sees that it's mated, and he's going to get mated here anyway. Okay, I solved it, and it just took time. Checkmate. White is victorious. That was a tough game. I really want to thank everyone for hanging in there with me. I didn't expect it to last this long, but I recognized that I had to take my time and work it out. And my tactics aren't the greatest, but in a correspondence game they're deadly, because I will take my time like this and I will sort them out. And that's kind of how I treated this. I treated this as a correspondence game the best I could after I realized that the computer was playing reasonably well. So, level 3, it's not that bad. I'm going to definitely have to take it more serious on level 4. Level 1 and 2, it's horrible. Level 3, it started out horrible. But level 4, it's going to get tough. And I'm going to have to play very, very, very carefully against this thing. So, I want to thank everybody that stopped to look at this. Thanks for your time. And this should be an interesting series, man against the computer. I've managed to beat it on 3 levels, and it got a little tough on me. And who knows why it got tough. Maybe because I was playing too quick. I'm not going to make any excuses. Maybe because it just plays really well at points, and I had to take it seriously. I mean, I could have lost this if I took this nonchalantly, but I'm not going to take it nonchalantly on level 4. And I don't know what level I won't be able to beat it at. I guess we'll find out when I get there. I can't expect to beat it on its strongest level. Crafty is tough. But anyway, that's it for this one. We'll talk to you all real soon. Thanks again for your time. Bye.